Hey sis, and welcome back to the Sisters Podcast. We're your host. I'm Lois.
I'm Bree.
We have a special guest back again, Anna Laura. Hi.
Hey.
So today's episode is actually all about Anna Laura, which I'm so interested in. I'm so excited for this because Anna Laura and I know each other from her days at Jacksonville State, but I haven't caught up with you in a while. So we're about to. This is pretty much like you're going to be sitting on our couch, like catching up with us, pretty much. Except it's all about Anna Laura. Anyway, I'm going to tell a funny story about one memory I have that sticks out with Anna Laura. For some reason, this is a very random memory, but this is like one of your last months at school before you moved.
Probably, yeah.
We went to a haunted house. And something about Alabama is we're a little different. And so we have haunted chicken houses. So it's literally an old chicken house, like huge chicken thingy, chicken house, coop, I don't know, turned into a haunted house.
And it was creepy.
So we drove, it was like 45 minutes away from where we live. So it was us two, Jada and Corinne, which two of our friends, we hopped in my car. We take a little road trip out to this haunted chicken house, and on the way back, it was fun. Like, we had fun. Anna Laura was hilarious. Fun fact. But Anna Laura was so funny going through this. But on the way back, we were almost. People make fun of my driving. Some people say I'm a bad driver. Some people say I'm too safe of a driver. So you just pick your poison, Anyway, so this particular driver thought I was going too slow. It was an 18-wheeler. So I was about to exit. So I was in the right lane, getting ready to exit. And he, for some reason, I wasn't even in the fast lane, but he was following behind me, and he flashed his lights at me a million times to get over. And I was like, why would I get over? I'm in the slow lane. I'm about to exit. Anyway, he got mad at me. So he comes over into the left lane and runs me off the road with Anna. This is the first time Anna Laura ever rode with me too, I'm pretty sure. And so he runs me off the road. But Anna Laura doesn't remember this.
I don't know. I don't think I remember the haunted house. I remember all that, but I do not remember getting run off the road.
And that's the biggest memory in my mind. When I think of Anna Laura, I think of the time we almost died in the car together. And she doesn't remember this.
I blocked it out of my memory.
Trauma. Anyway, okay. So Anna Laura, I guess you'll be able to tell by the title of this episode at this point, but Anna Laura was diagnosed with MS. Was it last year?
Yes, October of last year.
So it's like recent.
This is pretty new.
I've never met Anna Laura. So I'm excited to hear about her story, but I didn't know that it was like a recent thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm just learning, dealing with.
So you're still kind of like in the midst of navigating everything.
Yes, for sure. And I've already learned a lot, but I'm sure I've got a lot more to learn,
Yeah, it's going to be like a journey to see how you progress too and stuff like that, right? I don't know much about MS. We're going to learn today. We're with this Dr. Anna Laura right here with us. Some questions I wanted to ask. Okay, so first off, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into MS, because you introduced yourself a little bit in the last episode, but we didn't go in depth. So tell us a little bit about yourself more on that so we can know you.
Well, my name is Anna Laura. I'm 24
Say your last name, because I can't say
Anna. Lois tried earlier.
She keeps adding letters.
My last name is Gurganus. Gurganus. It sounds just like it's spelled. It's spelled just like it sounds, but people mess it up all the time. And Lois kept adding an extra G in there.
Gurganus.
That's not it. It's Gurganus. Anna Laura Gurganus. I am from Alabama, Cordova, Alabama.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Exactly. I live in Mississippi now, working for the Gospel Broadcasting Network. Do you want me to put another plug in there about GBN or no?
We already did it last episode. We love GBN. And
go follow GBN. Okay.
Yes, do it, please.
Besides that, hobbies-wise, something fun, I really like to write, like stories, like fiction, and I would like to, my goal is to publish a book.
You went to school for that, right?
I did. Well, creative writing was my minor.
Okay.
And then journalism was my major, So
she went to school at Jack State, as I mentioned, which is where I live. So that's how we met. Okay, anyway, moving on. Okay, so tell us what MS is.
Yeah, so MS, or multiple sclerosis, is an autoimmune disease that attacks your nervous system. So your nerves have that, I don't know if I'm saying it right, the myelin sheath. That is that protective covering, and so the immune system is eating away at that. And so the way it was explained to me is like a power cord. It has that protective covering, and if that's not on there, then that electricity is just going everywhere, And so that's what's going on inside my body.
Sorry. I'm really interested in science and stuff like that and health. So is it like, because I've looked into autoimmune disease. I'm a nutrition major, so we have to kind of like study that. Yeah. I've heard it explained like it's kind of like your body's attacking itself.
Yes, exactly. Sort of it is.
Okay.
And specifically, my body's attacking the nerves. Okay. So, yes.
So how did you find out that you have it?
So, last year, in 2023, we'll say that, the spring of that year, I was experiencing some fatigue. And I was just so tired. I could not get enough sleep. And it was bad enough that I went to the doctor about it, which means it was bad. And so they found that I had a vitamin D deficiency. They gave me a prescription and they sent me on my way. But then a few months later, I noticed numbness in my feet. And it started progressing up my legs. And it was the beginning of summer. Something else I also was experiencing during that time was, this has a name and I forget what it is because it's weird, but it was this sensation where if I did my neck like this, then an electric shock type thing would like shoot up to my back. And it didn't hurt. It was just jarring and it scared me. And so I was having these symptoms, but we were so busy. It was the beginning of summer with camp and VBS and all this stuff. And so before we could figure it out, they went away. The symptoms went away until a few months later, actually, when I got back from PTP, the numbness came back. And this time it progressed. It was much worse, and it came all the way up to my thighs. And so that's when I was like, okay, something's wrong with me. And so I went to the doctor, and it was very easy to see how God was with me through all this, I believe, because it's hard to get diagnosed with MS because you have to have an MRI that shows the lesions on your brain. And it's hard to get an MRI because they're so expensive. So doctors will try to rule out every other possibility before they send you for that MRI. The only reason I got an MRI is because I just happened to mention that I was also having headaches. And I don't even think that has anything to do with it. But I mentioned that. She sent me for an MRI, and so we were able to catch it early. After that, I had 2 more MRIs of my spine. I have lesions all up and down my spine. And I also had a spinal tap to make 100% sure that I have MS, and it did confirm it. So,
So what has the process been for you so far? Like, what are your symptoms, and how, or if, I guess, has it affected you spiritually?
So symptoms-wise, like I said, the biggest thing I deal with is fatigue. I did not know it was possible to be that tired, y'all. It's bad. If I'm overdoing it, is usually when that happens. And the numbness that I deal with, that is mostly better right now. Maybe a little bit in my feet still. But when that comes back, it's like I try to go exercise. I try to go like run on the treadmill. That'll come back sometimes. I'll feel it creeping back up my legs, and sometimes I have to just stop, take a break, and rest. Besides that, lately I've been dealing with restless legs, which is just uncomfortable. I'm never comfortable, and I feel like I always got to move, and they'll jump a little bit, but usually it's just discomfort, And besides that, there's just a lot of little things like heat intolerance, like. If it is the slightest degree too hot, it's just like game over. I'm done, and it just drains me. And and then things like brain fog, which really goes in with the fatigue and stuff. Just a lot of little things,
So it affects your whole body.
Yes, it's weird how you'll have all these symptoms and you don't realize that they're connected until you get the diagnosis, and you're like, oh, that explains all of this stuff. Spiritually, I would say in the beginning of finding out and being diagnosed, it was a roller coaster of emotions and feelings and strengths and weaknesses. And I'm the type of person, for some reason, this is a negative trait of mine. When I'm going through something hard that's overwhelming me, the first thing to go is my daily habits of Bible study and prayer, and which is exactly what you need in that moment is the Bible study and prayer. But I think I went through that a little bit, but now looking back over this past just over a year, actually, I can tell that I have really grown spiritually. Because the thing is, when you're going through something like this, you have no choice but to rely on God. Mm-hmm. You can't fix it yourself. I like to be able to find a solution and fix things myself, but you can't. And so I think it's good for us to have those occasional situations where you have to rely on God. You don't have any other option. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thankful for that with this. I'm thankful that I've had that opportunity and motivation to rely on God so heavily. My prayer life through all that, was probably better. Different scriptures kind of took on deeper meaning to me. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's definitely strengthened me spiritually in the end.
And we talk about like different trials. That's why I'm so interested in, because I've never sat down and talked to somebody who's had like a health problem or a health issue. And like we can compare it to, you know, trials as far as situations. But it's kind of like a different view, because it's like you said, like it's a health thing. And so it's like, it just is. I can't fix it. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like things, I have to rely on God and just trust that no matter what, that I'm following God. And your mindset, I can't imagine like, because you know, we talk about all the time having to switch your mindset and put on your, you know, glasses of eternal, your eternal glasses. But it's a real, like a mind struggle as well, like having to remind yourself of the Lord, and that He's there, and that He is where you dwell secure in. And so I just, you know, thinking of like, because when you first got the diagnosis, like what was the first thing? I mean, I don't know if you remember, but like,
no, I do. Trust me, I do.
Yeah.
The first thing, I had two immediate questions when I was diagnosed, and that was one, life expectancy, is that shortened? And two, the ability to have kids.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, those were the first things that popped into my head. Mm-hmm. And I Googled it, of course.
Yeah.
And
never Google
it. I know. And the life expectancy wasn't bad. It was still almost normal. And the kids thing, like a lot of people, everybody with MS has kids. So that really eased my mind. Mm-hmm. But you're so right. The mindset, like everything I want to talk about today, it all goes back in a way to your mindset when you're dealing with this. So
when I messaged Anna Laura asking her to talk about this, she gave me 3 main points. Mm-hmm. Like she just said, she didn't even name them as points, but she just said 3 things that have really changed her kind of look on living for God with this. And I was like, oh, there's our 3 main points right there. We can make a lesson just from that. So it's not a lesson. We're just talking here, but we are going to cover 3 points today. 3 points lesson is yours, you know, the biblical number.
And I also want to say, like, so I met Anna Laura, literally, I was in the parking lot, and she literally, the first thought that I had is she reflects so much joy. Like, she has been, and like I already knew that she had MS because we had talked about, you know, and I said it out loud because it's like,
that was sweet.
Wow, like look at this joy. Like I want to have that joy. And like I'm a Christian. I'm looking at another Christian being like, can I have that joy too? Like she's just precious and so sweet and kind. And you can just tell that by like meeting. I would have never known like this girl, like this time last year was going through something, and like she's struggling with something now, trying to learn it all. Because she just told it, like, I didn't know that it wasn't like a year's thing. It's been like recently. And so just being like recent, she is still like joyful. And so I felt like everybody needed to know that too, just because it's such a beautiful example.
Well, thank you. That's so sweet.
And she's always been like this. As long as I've known Anna Laura, she's just been so kind to everybody and always including and everything. But one thing that sticks out to me is, like you said, it's your life changed at 23 years old. You went from being a normal 23-year-old to now having is it a disease that cannot be cured, correct?
Right, yeah.
So you went from just living normally, like you went to college, you went to high school, you played all these played all these things. You played all these roles. So you had all these activities that you've always done as normal. And now you just, at one diagnosis, had to change.
Oh, yeah.
So much. And like, like you said, the two main questions you had at first, that would be like, okay, what about my future? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Because you have to give up it's not like you've lived with this forever. So it's like you've had the freedom to do, like your body has been normal until now. You've had that freedom. So now you have to relearn how to live, which, okay, so we're going to get into our first point. Sorry, we're talking over here, but we're really just three friends talking over here. Bree's already friends with Anna Laura. She just met her. But anyway, our first point is that Anna Laura gave me is redeeming the time, which I took it. You saying that from Ephesians 5:16, correct?
Yeah.
Which is redeeming the time because the days are evil.
Yeah.
So what do you have on that?
So the hardest thing about being diagnosed with MS, like I just said, was fear of the future. Because I don't know what to expect. Now I'm on a good treatment plan and I have a really good prognosis. But at that time, I had no idea. I didn't know how bad my case was or whatever. And everyone does differently with this disease. Some people live mostly normal lives, even at an old age. And then some people are in a wheelchair or on a walker by the time they're in their 40s and 50s. So it's impossible to know how my case is going to progress. And one day at work at GBN, something made me think about it, and it was bothering me really bad. And so I actually left, and I went to my car, and I just kind of broke down, and I was crying. And I called my mom, and we had a great conversation. And she gave me some really good advice, which was basically don't waste today worrying about tomorrow. And that has helped me so much. And I have to tell that to myself pretty often. And it makes me think of the end of Matthew 6, because that's basically what that's about. It says, that last verse says, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And that passage, Matthew 6, 25 through 34, that is one of my favorite passages. And it's a go-to of mine when I'm feeling worried or stressed or anxious, because when I read it, when I feel like that, it's like a toe stepper, honestly. Because it's like, what are you doing? Like, stop that. God's going to take care of you. And worrying is so easy for us to do when we are going through something hard. But as this passage points out, what does that do for us? Absolutely nothing. It says, which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? And the answer to that is obviously none of us can make ourselves taller by worrying about it. And so when you look at it that way, you realize that all you are doing by worrying is wasting the precious time that you have now. So something that having MS has taught me is to make the most of every single day. And I appreciate the physical health that I enjoy now so much more than I used to. And I try to take advantage of it, and I try to take care of it better than I used to. I try is a key word. I try to eat better, and I try to, exercise and stuff to take care of that so that I can enjoy it longer. But I think we should all do that very thing of making the most of every day, because we never know. Like you said, it was one day I was a healthy 23-year-old, and then the next I had this diagnosis, and my life was changed. We never know when something like that's going to happen to us, and we won't get to enjoy those things that we take for granted.
You're just really making me think over here. Like, it's your mindset and like your just outlook on the whole situation is so encouraging. It really, you're amazing, Anna. You really are. Just hearing all of this just makes it really puts your life into perspective. We aren't promised tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't even know if we have tomorrow,
Right.
And we have to live like that. We have to live. And we've talked about on here about how we can waste so much time worrying about tomorrow. We're always living in the future, when right now is all we have and all we're promised to have. We don't know what the next moment holds. And Anna Laura, like you said, 23 years old, and it just changed like that. It's crazy.
And so, because of that, my advice to anyone is make sure that right now, don't put off getting your life right with God, and don't put off serving Him, and don't put off the important things in life, because you're going to blink and one day it's going to be too late. So something else that is really important for us to remember when it comes to trials we deal with is something that I heard in a lesson at PTP that Key Ford gave. Key Ford is, he's a counselor. I don't know his credentials, but he's a counselor of some sort. And he's also on the show Make It Plain that House to House and GBN work together.
Okay, I knew that name.
Yes,
I love
Key
that
Ford.
podcast. Okay.
I do too. And they're great. They're great guys. And this lesson was about stress. And one of his points was your diagnosis doesn't define you. And in the context, he was talking about mental health, but I was able to apply it to myself with my physical health, because the point is we cannot let our problems dictate our lives. So for example, I've already talked about the fatigue that I deal with. It would be really easy for me to wake up like on a Sunday morning feeling really tired and say, oh man, I can't go to Bible class or worship because I'm really tired and it's this MS. It would be so easy for me to do that, but I just can't, you know? And I think it's easy for people dealing with all kinds of problems, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, even it doesn't have to be a literal diagnosis. It's easy to let that overtake their lives and control what they think they can and cannot do. I see that a lot.
I was at church one Sunday and I was talking to this elderly lady and I just asked her, like, how are you doing? And she said, honestly, like, I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm going to be here until I can't be here anymore. And that really made me think, like, I am so blessed to have the health to be able to come here. It's not like I have to go worship. I get to go worship. And I'm sitting there in good health. I feel good, you know, and she's there until she said, I will be here until I physically cannot be here, you know, and that's admirable.
It is.
I think Lydia had said this about a lady, and it has stuck with me forever. The lady said, use me until I'm all used up and then take me home. Like, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter what happens, regardless of whatever situation you're in, whatever your health status, whatever, you can be used. Use me, and I always think about that, is just use me up until every ounce is finished.
And the Bible talks a lot about, you know, self-control, taking control of yourself and your actions. Proverbs 25:28 says, whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls. So do you let your problem, whatever it may be, dictate your actions and control your life? And I know that there are legitimate situations where people are really unable to do things. And let me tell you, I have had to slow down. Like, I can't do all the things that I used to could, for sure. But the point is, what is your mindset? Because when you get out of the thought process of, I can't because fill in the blank with your problem, and you realize that you are so much more than your diagnosis, then you can take back control of your life.
I think a good thing to replace I can't because is I can because of God. You know, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This verse is talking about being content in all circumstances, but I think it applies here too, as we are able to do anything and everything because of our God. The devil can use our health or our physical health, our mental health, or trials as a thorn in our flesh to take us away from God. Or God can use those thorn in our fleshes to push us closer to God. You know, I'm not saying God gave you the thorn in the flesh. I don't believe that's what it is. But I'm saying that thorn in the flesh can be used for good, and it can be used to draw you closer to God. And you never know. Like, I believe Anna Laura coming on this podcast today and sharing her story is going to help people's lives. It's going to make us all think, put us into perspective. And I'm so thankful you're here to share it. Thank you, Anna Laura. But I really do think that the thorn in the flesh and the trials that we go through can be used for so much good for God, you know?
Yes, I totally agree. And a third thing that I want to talk about is keeping a positive mindset. This is something that is not always easy to do, but I think it's crucial when we're dealing with trials in life to keep a positive mindset. One day, Teresa Hampton was at the studio at GBN, and she, if you don't know Teresa, she's just a great godly woman. I love Teresa. I look up to her. And she's spoken at PTP, and she has also written several books, and she also has MS. And so one day she was at the office because her husband was filming, and she actually filmed a few episodes that day, but I told her about my diagnosis, and she jumped into giving me a lot of great advice. She would be better on here than me because she's gone through it a lot. Like, she knows. She's She's got a lot of good advice.
So do you.
But one thing that she said stuck with me. She said, I don't have a bad day. I have a not so good day. Mm-hmm. And so I try to remember that when I'm having a day where I'm feeling particularly tired, or my legs are extra restless or numb or whatever it may be, I try to remember to tell myself, you're not having a bad day, you're having a not so good day. And it's amazing how powerful that mindset can be. One verse that has really helped me to keep a positive mindset through this, and that has grown to mean so much more to me through all of this, is 1 Corinthians 10:13. It says, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man, but God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it. So the Greek word there for temptation can also mean trial. So of course, when we read this verse, we know that it is teaching us that we'll never be forced to sin, but I think it also makes me think of how God is never going to let us, I'm not saying he puts us through it, but he's never going to let us go through something that we can't handle. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy to handle by any means, but if we rely on him, we can handle it, and it will make us stronger in the end. And when I read this passage in this light, it makes me think about Job, because the cool thing about reading the book of Job is we see that conversation between Satan and God in the beginning, and so we know exactly why Job is going through all of those terrible trials, but Job doesn't see that conversation, and so he has no idea, and so he wonders why is this happening to me? And the reason he was going through that was actually a huge compliment, because God knew that he could handle it. Now, we do not know the mind of God, so we can never know why something is happening to us, but we see examples like this from scriptures that let us know that there are things going on in the spiritual realm that we don't know or understand. And for me, that is comforting, because I know that God has a plan. And it's like what Joseph said after going through a lifetime of difficult things. He said his brothers meant evil against him, by selling him. But God meant it for good. Like you said, like me coming on this podcast, maybe I can help some people with that. So I don't know what good things I'm going to be able to do with this diagnosis, So we never know how the providence of God is working, but we can be sure that something positive can come out of our trials, even if it takes a while to see that. And that can help us keep a positive mindset.
Well, and that's where faith comes in.
Right.
Like, if we had heaven on earth, why would we want heaven?
Exactly.
If we knew, if God was like, well, this is going to happen, so be this way, then where would our faith be? How would our faith grow? And for you, it's like you had this diagnosis and now you don't know why. You don't know if there's a reason, if there's not a reason. You don't, there's no reason to it, right? And I think a lot of times, as far as people in trials, there's a lot of things we go through where we're like, because I'm the same way. I like to know why. And it's like, okay, now that I know why, let's fix it.
Yes, exactly.
Let's fix everything. Yes. I'm very much fixer. And I think of the verse, lean not on thy own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Because we're not directing our path, and our job is to look to the Lord and for our faith to come in and say, it does not matter if I know or if I don't know. I'm going to follow the Lord no matter what. I don't have to know. It's not mine to know. I'm glad I don't know, because I want my faith to grow. So definitely a faith builder as well. And I see that in you. That's what's so cool, is I see it in you when I met you for 2 seconds.
I think everybody who's listening to this can see that too. And the genuineness of you is just, it really is so admirable.
Well, thank y'all. Y'all are going to leave me.
Yeah, don't get a big head or anything.
But circling back to something that I mentioned at the very beginning, the only way you are going to get through these kind of trials is to rely on God. And we're all going to go through trials. It may not be like a health thing, but we're all going to go through something. We're all going to have a thorn in the flesh. And if you don't yet, you're going to. So get ready. But the only way to get through it is to study his word. And, the Bible has all kinds of advice and examples for whatever we're going through. Spend time in prayer, spend time with your Christian brothers and sisters, because that's the best encouragement that you can get. And I promise you that if you are going through a trial, if you use that time to grow your relationship with God, then you will come out stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Anna Laura. We really have loved this so much. I think I've said that like a million times this episode, but it really just has been really great. Again, Anna Laura mentioned that she works for GBN, and we highly recommend GBN. We cannot recommend them enough. Look up their app. She said they have an app. I love the app. Bree and I both have I think we've brought it up in several episodes actually about talking about.
And they have Make It Plain on there. We've never mentioned that podcast. Well, it's like a show, but it's like a podcast. But it's so good.
GBN does podcast as well, and they were making fun of me because I said GBN House to House, we're besties. Like, we really are. We love the work of GBN, and we cannot recommend them enough. So we highly suggest checking them out. And thank you so much. Again, check out our website, sisterspodcast.com, and be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. Bye, y'all.